Hi, I'm Andrew, and this is Blaster Breakdown. Today I'll show you how I put together a Select Fire Infinus. This blaster uses the Suild Select Fire kit from the Rapidstrike, giving me control over single, burst, full auto fire with adjustable rate of fire and adjustable FPS. I've also installed an on-off switch at the back, press button voltmeter, while keeping the original dart loading mechanism. Let's have a look inside. Okay, so here's the inside of the Infinus. This is the old flywheel cage, of course. I've disconnected that, I won't need it. Front barrel. So for flywheels I'm going to use this Worker metal 42.5mm cage, smooth wheels and Neo Rhino motors. I'll just sit in front in the usual place. For the pusher I've got a Fang revamped motor in place there, so this gearbox is exactly the same as the Rapidstrike. I won't show you how to do that, there's plenty of guides online. The dart loading mechanism has multiple motors, sensors, locks, etc. that all go into this control board, so it's very busy at the back there. I'm not going to make any changes at all to any of those locks, sensors, motors, etc. What I have done is snip off the wires that connected to the flywheel cage, and they joined on just about there. And the three switches I care about are the cycle control in red, rev trigger in green, and firing trigger in blue, and I've snipped those off where they attach to the board. Now that they're isolated, I can treat them just like a regular Rapidstrike. Then I'll just need to install a buck converter between the LiPo, that'll be at the back here, and the control board, so that the dart loading mechanism gets 6 volts, while the rest of the blaster gets the full 3S to run these flywheels and the pusher motor. And here's the Suild Select Fire board itself. I won't run through exactly how this works. There is some good videos showing it installed into the Rapidstrike on the store website, so have a look at those. I'll get it to sit in the front underneath the barrel somewhere around about here. And you can see the board has multiple connections for the wires that control the various functions. The first is the Select Fire switch connector. It's got 5 wires there, and that'll connect to this 4-position knob. And this will control safety, semi-auto, burst fire, and full auto firing modes. The next connection has 3 pins, and this controls the rate of fire. So 3 wires of course, and that will attach to one of the potentiometers, and dialing that up and down will increase or decrease the rate of fire. The next connection is 2 pins for the cycle control switch. So this one is the right length for the Rapidstrike, but I'm going to have to lengthen it somehow to get around and underneath and connect back into the cycle control switch somewhere out of the way. Or maybe I'll go over the top and make it shorter. That could work. The next connection is 2 pins for the firing trigger, so that's the blue wires here. I might extend those over the top along with the cycle control switch wires. Right, so that's all the switches and knobs that I need to connect to the board itself. Then we just need to connect the power, the flywheels and the pusher motor, and that uses these holes on the right hand side. So I'll have 3 pairs of thicker gauge wire, 16 or 18 AWG. 1 pair will go to the flywheels at the front, but 1 pair will go across to the pusher motor and one pair will go all the way across to the battery tray at the back, so I'll need to make space there. So the pusher motor will sit like that. It'll probably be easiest running the wires underneath everything to connect to these two motor tabs. But for the flywheels, there's a little bit more cleverness to put in. So this is the MOSFET board, and it's got 4 silvery tabs you can see on the back side here. So they're for the power coming in and out, positive and negative. So one side will connect to the flywheel holes on the board, and the other side will connect to the positive and negative of the flywheel cage itself. And this bottom right 2-pin will connect to the rev trigger, which are the green wires down the bottom here. So that'll have to run across. And then we have the PWM module. And this connects to the MOSFET board with just these 3 pins slotting into these 3 holes. And by plugging in another 3-wire connection and wiring that up to another potentiometer, that then gives us a dial that will increase or decrease the power going to the flywheels, and so how fast they spin, and that will adjust the FPS when we pull the trigger. Okay, so that will leave us with 3 knobs that I'm going to fit in at the bottom in this triangle area. So we've got one for the select fire control, we've got one for the rate of fire, and we've got one for the FPS, essentially the power of the flywheels turning themselves. Now here's some work I've already done at the back. This is completely optional, of course. I've cut holes for a few components. We've got a voltmeter that's just pressed in place there, so it's just got 2 leads, and these will be connected to a momentary push button, so when you hold the button it'll show you the voltage. And finally I've got a master switch, a kill switch, and that'll control power to the board, well, the whole blaster really, so I can turn the whole thing on and off as need be. So that switch has 3 pins, nice clicky sound, and yeah, a little blue LED will come on when the blaster is turned on. Okay, now I can start connecting everything up, not touching any of the dart loading mechanism or the board other than attaching a buck converter to give it 6 volts. I wire up all the bits to the select fire board, MOSFET and PWM module, to the flywheels, the switches back to the board, and then the pusher motor of course will slot in, hopefully without much trouble. Yeah, okay, let's make a start and see how it goes. Okay, this is coming along really well. Don't worry, it looks more complicated than it really is, just because of the length of all the wires. We'll deal with that later. So at the back here I've connected this buck converter to deliver 6 volts to the board, so that the dart loading mechanism doesn't get overvolted. And I'll just try and show you, I've snipped off the green and the blue pairs of wires that went to the rev trigger and firing trigger, so they're cut really short at the board, so those 2 switches are isolated. And the cycle control switch, which is a pair of red wires, I've also cut that off and just put a bit of heat shrink over the top. This grey and red wire carries power to the buck converter. That'll go into the battery tray, and I'll shorten that at the end. And up the front here we've got the select fire board itself with all the various wires connected, and they're all joined up to the different dials and selectors that I've installed at the front, so these are obviously sticking out on the right hand side of the blaster. The first set of wires is the select fire knob for safety, semi, burst and full auto. The next dial is the rate of fire potentiometer, so 3 wires there. The next connection is the cycle control switch, and I've just bundled these together under some heat shrink that connects to these pink wires. And then the fourth set of wires is the firing trigger. Again, this runs through the whole lot, and that connects to the blue trigger switch wires. Then the green rev trigger wires, they'll go through and they connect to the PWM module with these 2 wires, now black and red, and these 3 go to the third knob on the outside, the potentiometer that controls the power to the flywheels. And then that just slots into the MOSFET. MOSFET of course carries the higher gauge 16 AWG wires that carry power from the board to the flywheels. The same wires get power from the battery tray at the back and also go underneath to the pusher motor. So I can just reconnect the MOSFET to the PWM module for the flywheels with those 3 pins that slot in. I think I'll use some hot glue to hold down these wires that go over the top of everything. All the wires at the front I'm going to shorten and neaten all those up, and then I'll just find a way to neatly run these thicker wires underneath everything so that they don't pop up and they stay out of the way. But it's all wired up fine. I've tested with AA batteries. You should never test with a LiPo, of course. So with this temporary connection, we can plug it in and see how it sounds. First of all, safety. Then single shot. And 3-round burst. And finally full auto. So that's all at a slow rate of fire. Now by adjusting the middle knob, I can increase or decrease that. And of course that also works for the 3-shot burst mode. And the third knob controls the flywheels. Okay, that's great. That all works perfectly. Now I'll disconnect the Rapidstrike part of the circuit and I'll connect the buck converter and we'll check the dart loading mechanism. So just slotting this red and grey wires into my temporary connection. But of course this function relies on multiple safety switches being pressed, so you've got the jam door lock up here, you've got the magazine locks at the front. One detects the 30-round Infinus magazine, so nothing will work unless they're all pressed. So I'll just grab a magazine to slot in. There we are. Now if I connect the power, we'll see the indicator LED turn red because it thinks the jam door is open. If I press this button here, it turns green and it's ready to load. So I'll grab a few darts and I'll cover the jam door lock so it thinks the blaster is shut. And as you can see, these load nicely, get pushed down into the magazine, ready for firing. So 2 thumbs up. Okay, now I've just got to fix this wiring down, tidy up at the front, shorten everything, tuck in these wires around underneath, and connect up my battery door functions at the back there with the on-off switch and the voltmeter. And of course wire up my power for the LiPo, so the black and red to the buck converter, and these thick ones for the select fireboard running to the front. Okay, I haven't done the battery connection yet, but here you can see I've glued down these wires so that they're clear from the dart loading mechanism and free of the flywheels. And here I've shortened down all of the sets of wires going to the various controls and put them inside a bit of heat shrink, so the front of the blaster is now a lot neater and that'll sit a lot nicer. So that's good. I'll just finish off the battery tray section and then we'll do a firing demo. Okay, so here's the finished product. We've got our 3 dials at the front here: select fire, rate of fire and FPS. At the back, master switch, so that's on, and then when we hold down this blue button, the voltmeter, it's a bit hard to see, but 12.5 volts, my LiPo is fully charged. I'll insert the 30 round drum and you can see that the indicator LED comes on, green initially and then yellow, so it's empty, and then I can just begin loading. So I've got some worker red full lengths, just load those one at a time and get them in nicely, get it rolling the right way. And when it counts 30 darts, the LED will flash to show me that it's full. I'll start with the low FPS setting and then gradually increase it. That was semi-auto. Now I'll do a 3 round burst, first at a slow and then at a fast rate of fire. And after a reload, here's those functions again. Single shot, 3 shot burst and full auto at slow and faster rates of fire. Out of darts. So there you have it. That's the Select Fire Infinus, a fully configurable mod allowing you to control firing mode, FPS, rate of fire, keeps your original dart loading mechanism as is, with a few goodies down the back, voltmeter and a kill switch. I'll link to Suild's shop where the internal components are sold, but if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.